Hi, everybody. This is Jim Safran with Pure Vintage Media, and welcome to our podcast. Last week, we spent some time with Derek Shulman, founding member, lead vocalist, lyricist, and multi-instrumentalist from that great group, Gentle Giant, one of my favorites. You're going to learn a lot about Gentle Giant in this interview, including hearing about the new remix of their 1977 live album, Playing the Fool, and who created the Giant logo. Stick around, we're going to find out. Now let's get to it. Derek Shulman, Gentle Giant.
Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Derek?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, not bad.
I'm familiar with that background for you for the.
Yes, this is my hideaway study in the back of the apartment here.
Oh, beautiful. You're based in New York, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Where are you based?
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Ever heard of it?
Oh, yeah, a few times. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Probably just going through the airport, I'm sure.
No, yeah, well, that as well. But we played there back in the day several times as well, of course.
Yeah, geez. At that time, I think I was still living in Los Angeles, but for some strange reason, a woman that I love, I ended up in Charlotte. So 40 years
Well.
later, here I am. I want to tell you, I hear this when people interview you all the time. What a pleasure it is to meet you. But I almost feel like I've known you for 40 years, 50 years, and we've never met. And I think that's a testament to you and the music of Gentle Giant. There's not only the familiarity with the music, but there's, whenever I've been engaged with people talking about, and I don't even know how you feel about this term, prog bands. I try to explain what made you special, and I think what made you special was you were a true ensemble, and that really struck with me. I probably saw every great progressive band that came through Los Angeles at the time. Everybody wanted to play the whiskey. That was the big draw. If you came to town, you had to play the whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a gentleman that was British, and he was one of the first individuals to bring English pressed albums to the United States. So we had a real taste for anybody that was coming through. He also imported Melody Maker magazine, but it was because of the mail, it was always about 4 weeks late. But they'd have announcements like new supergroup, and by the time you got it, they'd already broken up, which was pretty typical. But I became familiar with Gentle Giant very, very early on. The first album, I was a fan of anything that Vertigo put out at the time, and I think I told you in an email that a lot of your interviews seem to focus on the later years. Certainly, the years where you were at the top of your game, no doubt about it. But I feel very, very strongly about the first few albums. And I think you can see in the background here is my vertical pressing of 3 minutes.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay. That's the British version, yeah.
Yeah, so if we get to that point, I do want to talk to you a little bit about how much that meant to me. Where did the name come from? I've two questions I've never been able to get the answer to. And that's one of them is, where did the name originate?
Well, it originated from we had a patron, if you like, as a manager, and when we got together, we had the manager who was able to fund the band, or the Shulman brothers, should I say, putting the band together, and for about 6 to 9 months, we were rehearsing and finding the right members to do what we eventually did, or had the band become Gentle Giant. And from time to time, a guy would come down to make sure we weren't spending our time in the pub or gambling the money away. And his name was Colin Richardson. He worked for Jerry Braun, who was our manager / patron. And he would ask us, "Have you decided on your name?" And we said, "No, we haven't." And we play in our songs. And he said, "Well, I have an idea, because it's really heavy and sometimes it's very light. Why don't you call yourself Gentle Giant?" We said, "Okay, you're paying, so we'll call ourselves Gentle Giant. That's exactly how it happened. It was named by this guy, Colin Richardson, who worked for Jerry Braun, and he named us Gentle Giant. We said, okay, you've got the cash. We're good with this.
Yeah, that wasn't a bad compromise to make, if you ask me. I think it's a great name. It's so iconic. And I always wondered, and you've stuck with it through the years, who created that incredible, I don't know what to call it, logo icon of the Giant? I know it wasn't Roger Dean, was it? It was.
No, no. It was a story which is kind of interesting. We were in the studio with Tony Visconti, our first couple of albums, and while we were in the studio working on the first album, actually, he was also working with David Bowie's "Man Who Sold the World" and T-Rex at the same time. So Tony, we struck up an incredible friendship slash, he was also, he kind of almost became a member of the band. He let us sleep on his floor in Putney in London, and he said, "I've got a great friend who's David Bowie's best friend, and his name is George Underwood." And he said, "He's a great artist. Why don't you try and let him come up with an idea for the logo and the cover for Gentle Giant?" And we said, "Sure." We had other people that were, working with us. We said, "Okay, look, we're good with anyone who comes up with the right visuals, if you like." And effectively, he came back the week after we met George, and he showed us this picture of the Giant with the band in his hands. We said, "Great, perfect. That looks like what it should be, is Gentle Giant." So that's in fact how we came to have this album cover and the logo. It was David Bowie's best friend George, and Bowie was recording at the same time as we were with Tony Visconti. So it was like alignments of the stars, making the cover, if you like.
I've Googled that for years and can never find an answer to that. So thank you very much for all the
Okay.
Little Giant fans out there. You've heard it. I told you I grew up in Los Angeles, and I think I saw you guys there 3 times, and they were quite memorable. And there's one thing about YouTube, it's amazing how many concerts have been archived. Sometimes they were with a cheap cassette player, and sometimes they were pretty elaborate. Um, I My most memorable experience was seeing you at the Whiskey, and
Right.
it was a school night. Told my mom, I'm going to see Gentle Giant. She goes, "No, you're not." And I said, "Yes, I am." And I went down there, and if I remember correctly, you were playing with Harvey Mandel.
I
Uh,
believe so. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was a fan of Harvey Mandel's also. But I remember coming around the corner, and there's a picture of it online that I'll share with you if you'd like, but if you haven't seen it. But it's the line is around the corner for the first night of Gentle Giant. I'm going, wait a minute, I thought I was about the only person that knew who Gentle Giant was. And it made me realize that you had already made tremendous inroads into, I guess, the US based audience. And that was great. I do have one memory that I need to share with you. Standing, first off, I looked at they have a picture online, and I remember this, how small the stage was at the Whiskey, and you guys
Right.
were crammed together. There was no
Absolutely.
breathing room, and I was standing next to, I think I got pushed eventually to the side where John was playing drums, and this is a great memory. I hope he's not offended when he hears it, but he was playing, and without missing a beat, he leans over and he pukes into a bucket or a spittoon and didn't miss a beat. I don't know if he had a bad night, he ate some bad clams or something, but it was great. It's something that I'll always remember. And when you watch him play, it's I don't know. He's just a great rock drummer, and he
Oh
seems
yeah.
to fit you guys just perfectly. That was a great experience. And I had somebody. I saw you guys at the Aquarius Theater for that in concert
Oh
program
yes. Yeah.
you taped,
Right.
And I could have sworn that, and this is old age, you just, everything gets compressed, but I thought for sure that I saw you on that same tour there. And a friend, an acquaintance of mine has reminded me that was actually taped much later. It wasn't that, it wasn't a day, and I always wanted the opportunity to ask you this. But I believe that was later in the year or even the following year that you actually made a trip back to Los Angeles to do that show.
Boy, if I again, age-related memories, etc. But I'm not sure if it was part of that tour or whether I don't think we came back specifically to come to do a show in LA. I think we would have been it would have been part of a tour. So
Okay.
I think it probably was part of the tour. I don't think it was a whiskey show. I think it was the year after, I believe, that
Yeah.
was filmed. But yeah, we played LA. Our first show was in LA was the Disaster of Disasters with Black Sabbath on at the Hollywood Bowl. But that now you're mentioning the whiskey shows. Yeah, we came back. The year we thought we'd never play LA again after that show, and we came back the year after. And in fact, as you said, we sold out 5 nights at the whiskey, and then we could have done 10 apparently. So it was pretty magical that as I said, we thought that this is, something that LA was never going to, allow us back in, even in California. But it turned out that we had fans, and you were one of them. But we played several other shows, and one of the best shows I remember, in fact, was at the Shrine Auditorium in I think it was 75 or 76. And that was an incredible show. That was we were great. We were on fire at that point. We were playing at our best level. And I just remember at the end we came out to do an encore, and our encore was done, and the audience wouldn't let us, wouldn't leave. The lights were up, and so we said, back down, we better do another song. And so we came out again, and I think we had one more song rehearsed, and we played that, and they wouldn't leave. They literally, it was 7,000 people who just would not leave, and the lights were up, and over the loudspeaker, I think that this is the end of the show, but the audience wouldn't leave. So we thought, damn, what are we going to do? So we went out again, and in rehearsals, we'd play different kind of things that were just crazy things. We play in the midnight hour, Otis Redding sing, just as a
Wow.
rehearsal thing. So John suggested, let's go out and play in the midnight hour. So we as a kind of like just on the spur of the moment situation, as a third encore. That eventually got the crowd to leave.
Oh, really? I was going to say that goes back to your true roots, right? We
Yeah,
love,
absolutely.
yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Wow. I wonder if that's archived anywhere online. We'll have to look for that.
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I actually went to that Hollywood Bowl show,
Oh,
and
okay.
um,
Really?
yes, I did. And I've heard your recollections about that. I don't remember, it wouldn't have been unusual, but I don't remember a firework going off in the
Oh,
middle of the show. I do remember that a lot of fans were there to see Black Sabbath and weren't appreciative of your talents. And I remember a couple times turning around and saying, "Shut up! You don't know who this is." But I do recognize when you listen to a tape of the performance, by the end you had won over the crowd. There is no doubt about it. They were going crazy. Um, that's my
yeah.
recollection.
Yeah, no, it certainly happened because we got it on tape actually,
Oh, okay.
and I was there, so I remember. It was quite unexpected, and not particularly pleasant to. It wasn't just a firework; it was almost like a bomb, and it really, it was scary actually, to tell you the truth, and we did something that no band should do, is stop playing. If you probably don't remember, if you didn't remember. And
No,
you know
I
the,
remember that.
Yep. So we stopped playing, and I said, "Hey, come on, this isn't cool." And my brother Phil had different expletives to the audience, and it it wasn't taken very well by the audience. And then we carried on and finished the set, and we got and then we got the hell backstage as soon as we could.
Well, I'm glad that LA's reputation was rehabbed for you once you went to did the whiskey shows, because it's just amazing. I've gotten into a lot, like I said earlier, I've gotten into a lot of discussions in so-called prog groups. And do you guys even like that term? I always feel funny about describing you as a prog band. I think you were pigeonholed with the time and the other groups that came out. But I was a fan of all that music in the early 70s. And what I always, and I mentioned this before, you guys were a true ensemble. I think a lot of those bands, I was a fan in the beginning, but as time went on with subsequent albums, they seemed to be more of individual soloists thrown together into a band. And for me, say King Crimson, and I'm probably not real popular with this, but my favorite album was Lizard, because it felt like more of an ensemble band, and it wasn't concentrated entirely on guitar. And I think with later years, despite his talent, King Crimson became Robert Fripp. And I found the same thing with Yes. The early days, they were more of an ensemble band, Tony Kaye and Peter Banks, and then it went on and it became John Anderson's band. And I didn't really appreciate the music as much. It seemed more, here's my shot for the solo. And the thing I can appreciate about Gentle Giant is that it was always fresh. Every album was fresh. It was different, and you played together. And I don't know if that's my viewpoint, or whether you made an attempt to keep it like that. There are times where I listen to some of the instruments being played, and I've got to look that up and see whether that was Phil, that was Derek, that was Ray. You never quite know.
Yeah, well, you're actually correct in saying that not just an ensemble. Yes, we were a real band, and a band of brothers, not just my own brothers, but the guys who were in the band that we found and became our best friends, and we were friends as well, and we lived in the same city. That's the thing as well. So we were in each other's pockets from the time we were rehearsing and recording and just being around each other all the time. So we were, again, a band of brothers, across the board. So yeah, it was an ensemble. There was never anyone's ego that got out in front of the band. It was a band, and a real band, as
Yeah.
opposed to someone's backing group or whatever it is. So yeah, you're exactly correct. That's exactly what Gentle Giant was, and we were very fortunate that we got along. We all had our quirks, but we knew how to allow them to sort of roll off our backs, and John puking on stage. Well, okay, that's what John did. Occasionally.
It was hilarious. No, I
But
mean, 'cause he did not miss a beat. He just boop, and right
I
on.
mean,
True
listen,
professional.
absolutely, that's what we all did that. In fact, yeah. So we were a band.
It's interesting, siblings and bands, there's a whole history, especially in the UK, of feuds, and having, two brothers in a band is one thing, but having three, you guys beat the odds there. And I know Phil left at some point after Octopus. But I got to tell you, those early albums, I love the interplay between your two vocals. I always looked at your vocals as the realities of life, and I felt Phil's were more angelic and the hope of life, and
Yeah.
it was a nice blend. I go back and I listen to those early albums, and I really appreciate that. When Three Friends came out, I'll be honest with you, I think I was probably 20, I think I was 18 at the time, and I understood the concept of the album. And this has just occurred to me recently. I hadn't lived it yet. So I understood what the theme of the album was, but that group of friends that I grew up with, we were still very, very tight. It didn't matter if one was going to go work at the post office, another one was going to be in construction, Another one was going to follow their heart and be an artist. Um, but in the end, as time goes on, you get older. I'm now 70. You look back, and that album was so predictive of how I would view life. Did you guys originally plan? I mean, it was a concept album, but did you
Yeah.
originally plan that based on your own experiences at that point already?
Yes, to a certain degree, yeah, of course. When you're a kid, and everyone is in it together, if you like, and there's no, you don't have any, you don't view the future 5 or 10 years in front of you. Just what your future is what the next hour or the next day. If anything, if even in front of what's in front of you as a kid. But as you continue to grow and grow up, you start developing your talents in whatever fashion they are, and that unfortunately makes you split apart from the basic sort of what become what who are your friends and who is your friend. And I guess there's elements of class and quality, which is
Yeah,
one of the songs. So yeah, it was based on our based on who we were and our experiences back in the day. I became a musician. Some of my old friends from school became academics. Some of my old friends from school became um, working in a post office. And when we were young, we go out and play together and play football, hang out in each other's houses. We started losing touch, and that's sad because it happens to everyone. But the naivety of a friendship as a kid, that's something which is always a beautiful thing to capture
yeah.
because it's there's no again, the future is only in front of you, and it's in just a day or two in front of you, not however how many years where you're gonna be in 10 or 15 years.
There's not many things that I find really pleasurable about Facebook, to be honest with you. But one thing is being able to recreate those bonds with people that you grew up with. My wife is fond of telling me, when I mention somebody, she'll go, "Well, is that a real friend or a Facebook friend?" And I got to be honest with you, at this point, I probably have more online friends than I have friends that live locally to me that aren't
Mhm.
involved in my business. But wonderful album, and I'm a big fan of The Fade, the last song on the album. And I got to tell you, Three Friends, that last cut is just one of the most memorable. It sounds like it could have gone on forever, quite frankly. And sometimes I want it to go on forever, but it's such a lovely, lush ensemble of music. It's absolutely my favorite album, and that cut just brings back so many memories.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's the album itself is a really good album. It was the only album where Malcolm Mortimer was our drummer.
Right.
And he did a really good job on that album. And in fact, that track itself, The Face, if you listen to it carefully, there's a big mistake in it where we kept it in, is when John played on the one beat after there was the song in there, but it went from the offbeat to the onbeat, and it shouldn't have been there, but we left it in because it sounded really interesting. So if you listen to it carefully, it goes from the offbeat to the onbeat,
Yeah.
and so therefore the riff itself was turned around. So just anyone who wants to listen to it again, it was a mistake, but it was one we left in because we loved the idea that it changed the whole concept and idea of the song.
And you know what? Life's not perfect, and my favorite recordings are like that. You hear
No,
in fact, the old vinyls that have the scratches and the skips have their own set of memories that it takes you back to. And it makes
yeah,
it
sure.
authentic. I always like that about you guys. You were polished, but you weren't mechanical about it. It's the best way.
No, in fact, I mean, in our on the album, which is out right now, the live album, the Playing the Fool, the new, a reimagined album, break breakdown in Brussels, Sweet Georgia Brown, that was literally ad lib because what happened was the Carrie's keyboards had broken down, and like a trooper band, we wanted to make sure that we carried on. So Gary, said let's because we did that again backstage in the studio. Or backstage we warm up and play different kind of things. He said let's go up front and play Breakdown in Brussels, we called it on the original album, and play Sweet Georgia Brown, Ray on the violin, Gary on acoustic, and John on the snare. And you could hear it was ad-libbed because at the end, when they finished, John's still playing and tapping on the snare, and we just left it in because it was a mistake, but it was authentic, and that's what the band was. I think we are authentic. We didn't pretend to be anything else. We weren't looking to be I don't know, someone else. It was a band. We were a band that did things in our own fashion, and again, even with the mistakes and the bumps and everything else involved.
Yeah, people don't realize, younger people don't realize how often concert equipment broke down in those
Oh,
days. In fact, the Hollywood Bowl, that was famous for the equipment breaking down, and the professionalism was usually musicians that could play through it and at least keep the audience engaged while the gear was being repaired. And but
right.
yeah, people don't remember that. It seems so automatic and programmed now when you go to a concert, and even the encores. Okay, there's only going to be two encores at best. Where there were
Well,
times where
you just heard a story about the
yeah,
Shrine Auditorium. Well, they wouldn't go, so we didn't have any more material, so we went out and played, Otis Redding, song. So here we go.
yeah. So now it's like the fire department is going to shut it down because of some arcane rule for the city.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, let's talk about playing the fool. I didn't realize that one of the original recordings, I guess, was a bootleg. It had an
Yeah.
E on the end. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, that was effectively the first bootleg that we saw, and we were on tour in the States, and we saw this bootleg in a record store, and in fact, we were pretty happy about it because we thought, no, seriously, we thought, who would, take the time out to record a band and sell it as an LP? We thought, that's a compliment, but when we decided to do the live album and Playing the Fool, we stole the title and called it originally the official bootleg. But of course, it's now the Playing the Fool, the reimagined. But yeah, it was the first bootleg that we found, and we were quite happy that someone was, thought there was enough audience of the bands to actually go out and press it and sell it. So.
There, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's the story basically.
I was going to say that there was a different attitude about bootlegs back then. I don't remember the lawsuits, and I remember there were even some record stores in LA that I remember at one point I had the Basement tapes by Bob Dylan, who subsequently years later, I think decades later, actually released all those cleaned up. But the original was a bootleg, and even Let It Be. There was a release that came out, and they did all kinds of cool things. They had like blue vinyl, and that was called Get Back instead of Let
Right.
It Be, and subsequently they became that album. Um, yeah, that's interesting. So, what is your attitude? What was your attitude about people taping your shows back then? Was it something visible or?
Yeah, we didn't know. I mean, we had no idea, and honestly, we had no idea. And in fact, it was only a long time afterwards that we realized that our shows were being taped, and people were, selling them, and we weren't, angry or litigious or so whatever it was. We just felt okay with this. It was good that again, that we were good enough, or whatever that means, for someone to tape the show and potentially sell it. We didn't get any royalties from it, and then we put out our own box set, which is effectively all the bootlegs, as well as some of the shows we put together about 3 or 4 years ago, and a limited version with a book, etc. And it sold out before it even came out. So, these the bootlegs, in fact, were kind of compliments. Actually, we felt we weren't like, put your phones away and put your recording equipment away. No, that's bullshit. Sorry.
I'm a fan of groups that allow Grateful Dead, I guess, is the one everybody knows.
Right.
But Los Lobos is another favorite of mine, and they're very open about go ahead and tape the show. I mean, I've seen people set up separate microphones, 15, 20 feet away to get a very good stereo effect without any issues from the band. This new release, I find it very interesting when I compare it to the original live album. It's got a more, what's the word I want? There's a lot more separation between the instruments where you can really hear the fidelity, and it brings out something that I didn't hear in the original. When I was growing up trying to copy a Beatles song, it was very tough on a mono record to pick out the different parts and what the chords were actually. And it's gotten better through the years, obviously, but this album's got a fidelity to it and an airiness that is really compelling and very fun to listen to. And I don't know if that's the purpose of a remix, but it was Dan
Bornemark, who's Swedish, and is effectively the band's archivist for many years, and also a great musician, and also a great producer. And he took a lot of time to make sure that there was space in the mix to hear the instruments. When you're playing live, it's a whole different kind of situation than in the studio. I mean, when you're playing live, there's bleeds of music everywhere, bleeds of different instruments, and he was able to, again, give the instruments some space and clarity, as well as having the ability now to put a couple of songs and Ray's incredible solo, which is always the highlight of the show, on the album. And that was, again, we didn't have time or space on the first go round to put these songs on the album. So we had we had the ability to do that on this release.
To show my copy, of course.
Good. There it is.
I'll tell you, there's one reason now you're gonna force me to buy a turntable to buy the vinyl version, because my poor eyes can't read the notes, the liner notes in the CD, which, back when you bought vinyl, that was always great to read through a million times. And for some reason, in the early days of CDs, they didn't do that. But I'm appreciative of the fact that there's so much content in here to read. I've got to get some readers, I guess. You brought up Ray, and I got to tell you, he was always one of my favorite bass players. I didn't really realize in the beginning how much of a multi-instrumentalist that all of you guys were. And Ray, I don't think I've ever heard anybody play the bass like Ray, almost like leading an orchestra. It was really something. And there were, I think you did a tribute video, or somebody in your organization did a tribute video on his passing. And it was so cool to see all the musicians that were touched by him. But to see Rudy Sarzo make, you quoted him in the comments, that was very, very cool.
Yeah, Rudy's a good guy.
He's a very cool guy, but I really miss Ray. Again, like I said earlier, I feel like I know you guys, and his passing just made me very, very sad. And when I listened to "Remember Me with Kindness," I know he didn't write that, but gosh, it tells me everything about Ray. That's the feeling I have when I play that song. It brings tears to my eyes. It really does.
Well,
And I know you miss him.
oh, of course I do. He was not just my brother, my younger brother, but he was my best friend through all the years. So, we were always in touch, even after the band disbanded. We were always in touch. We'd go hang out together. I'd fly to London, and it was a terrible loss for the fans and all his friends, but it was, of course, a huge loss to me and I think to everyone. And Ray was, he was a creative genius. He really was. He was a genuine, compositional and creative person that, not just his bass playing, but his ideas were always free flowing. And he was, again, not he was a multi-instrumentalist and never like my father. We came from a very musical household. Um, and he would pick up any instrument, and within 5 minutes, he could master it as well as anyone else. Ray had the same ability. Um, so yeah, we miss him desperately.
I was going to ask you that the household you grew up in, music was always playing.
Always, it was always around. My father was a professional jazz musician, and he was a trumpeter, but he could play any instrument in the same way. Anything was in front of him. Within a few minutes, he would be able to master it. So we were there was always music around the house. My brothers and my elder sister also. We didn't know anything but music effectively
Yeah.
in the house. But you can read about it in my book, which is coming out in September.
Really?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
It's called Giant Steps, and you'll read about the household and the family and all the stuff that went on and becoming Samba Dupree, molding into Gentle Giant, and then my life after that. But yeah, it's coming out in September.
Well, I hope you, after I've poured through that, I hope you'll make a return visit to us here. I would love to talk to you about that. Um, I did want to ask you about your later career. I've got a good friend that did A&R for Warner Brothers back around the same time you were involved on the other side of the desk. And he was a particular huge fan of Pantera. So when I told him I'd be doing this, he said, "Oh, that's great. That's great." I probably ran into him a number of times. Was that as fulfilling for you, finding talent, managing talent in a way, and as your career in music?
Um, well, yes, obviously, it was fulfilling, to be perfectly honest, in a financial aspect.
Yeah.
But yeah, to have bands that, in general, again, what I would sign and be interested in were bands who were, again, authentic, who were the leaders, not the followers. Pantera's one, for instance. I mean, when I went down to Arlington, Texas, I was running a company. I was, whatever it was, and I went down there, and there was about 20 or 30 people in the audience, and within 3 songs, I was a fan. I just, that's something that you can't manufacture something like that. They had Phil, who was an incredible frontman, and then Vinny and Daryl. They were just, and Rex. They literally blew me apart, and I became an executive like this within 2 or 3 songs. I was almost jumping into the mosh pit. I didn't, but I knew that they had some, and if they got me to become a fan within 2 or 3 songs, they could get anyone, and that's why they became who they were. And I decided to sign them, and I knew they wouldn't get on MTV because it was much too, they were too heavy for that. They wouldn't
Yeah.
really get on the radio because they were way too heavy for radio. But
Yeah.
I put money behind them in those days to get on the road, and that's exactly how they grew their audience. And within a couple of years, they became major headliners.
Fabulous band. Were they out of Texas originally, or
Yeah, yeah, Arlington, Texas. Yep,
there's
Dallas,
something
Texas.
about,
Yep.
yeah, as a side note, there's something about that Texas music scene. I've lived a lot of places, but there's nothing like I've experienced a lot of mentoring between established musicians and those that are up and coming. And it seems a lot of the egos are left at the door. And really never experienced that. I go there once a year for a music festival, guitar festival, and it's really great to see. It just reminds me of the old days a little bit.
Right.
Now, I know you toured with a bunch of disparate, probably bad billings, to be quite honest. And I did hear your comments about the Beach Boys, and I think I understand that quite a bit. Um, Care to elaborate or just?
Well, I mean, this is the Beach Boys. This is way back in the day. I mean, this is the earliest days of our first group, the Simon Dupree and the Big Sound. We were just turning professional. I mean, we were kind of like the lowest of the low on the bill. You know,
Right.
but we honed our chops. We would work pretty hard to get where we were at that point. Um, and said the Beach Boys tour. I mean, well, I loved their Pet Sounds. I mean, God only knows, and et cetera, et cetera. They were superb pieces of music. So when we started the tour with them, they weren't able to bring their backing group over. So because they had a backing group of 4 or 5 musicians, the musicians union they didn't allow them to come over. So really, it was a band, playing, and honestly, really, in particular, Dennis Wilson, backstage, we were watching them, and they were really not good at all. I mean, they sang. I mean, the singing, of course, is great, but I don't know how they were able to, they were able to sing whilst playing so badly instrumentally. I mean, I'm not kidding. It was, and I thought, was it me? And I looked it up actually, and I looked up the reviews, and they weren't just our band thinking, boy, they're not very good. The reviews were awful. I mean, reviews in the papers, in those day newspapers, the music press said the very same thing. It was they were, they couldn't really play their instruments. They had a backing group, but they would take, and then they were able to sing freely. But when they played their instruments, they weren't
But
good.
it was the attitude towards you guys that you really.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing that
Yeah.
really was they were completely dismissal of us. I mean, we said we love your records, and they just literally ignore us. Like, yeah, next, okay. So the whole tour, it was only a short tour, like 10, 12 days, but they locked themselves away from everyone. And if you try to speak to them, they were really like very unfriendly and almost like not aggressive, but just not didn't want to communicate at all. So we didn't even try to. After being dismissed on the first couple of shows, we said, let's stay away from this lot.
Yeah, it was always Brian Wilson and then the rest of the group, and everybody kind of knew where the genius was from that group, if there
Oh
was.
yeah, they're I mean, their songs, I mean, they were superb, but
Yeah.
live without those backing musicians, no thanks.
That was the famous Wrecking Crew.
Yes, exactly that. Yep.
That backed them up. So okay, I've always been curious. Why'd you move to the U.S.?
My wife.
Oh, okay.
My wife's from Texas, and no, we didn't. We actually moved to London, but actually, I went to the U.S. to basically. I was managing the band at that, eventually, me and my brother Ray, and we went over to basically. It was a big market for us. We were doing very well in some places. We were, especially in like Canada, we were headliners in 20,000 seaters, and in the major urban areas we were doing very well. So we went over to LA to do our last album, Civilian, and and I was living in London, but we went over just for that period of time, and when it was done, we stayed. I mean, we were going to be just staying for 6 weeks. and we decided to stay. And the 6 weeks became 40, what is it now? 47 years. So that's it. I met my wife prior to that, of course, in New York actually, but she was from Texas.
Yeah.
But yeah, we again, it was 6 weeks, and we remained in the USA, although we retained residence in the UK. Sorry, but yeah, we stayed here, and I went, as you said, I went to the dark side of the business after the band disbanded.
Oh, I don't think I said dark side, but I
Well,
get you.
I said it.
Well, a future wife will make you, as with me, I moved to North Carolina. Somebody had told me in high school, you're going to be living in the South. I would have laughed at him. But, you find a place that you love and you stay.
Yeah.
I hope you haven't regretted moving here recently.
Not as, I mean, well, recently, excuse me, let's not go there.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I live in Manhattan. I'm in a bubble,
Yes.
and I'm going to stay here in the bubble.
Excellent. Um, let's see. I wanted to talk to you about. I heard a recent podcast with you where you were talking about, and I wasn't aware of this. A number of hip hop artists have sampled Gentle Giant,
Yeah.
which is incredible. Can you talk like Travis Scott? Is that true?
Yeah, Travis Scott opened his new album. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, with the song, his first song on the album is called Hyena, and he sampled Proclamation. And
Wow.
he starts his set off with Proclamation from Power and the Glory. But we've had quite a few samples. Run the Jewels had a very big hit with Legend Has It. We and when I went backstage at the Tonight Show, I was running a company, independent company, and I brought Ann Wilson backstage from Heart, and the music director at the Tonight Show asked me, "Are you the Derek Shulman of not? You're not the Derek Shulman of Gentle Giant, are you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, hold on a minute." Yeah, and he went back to the dressing room, and the Roots, all the guys, Questlove and all the band came out, and I was with Ann Wilson, and they started like, "Oh, we're not worthy," to me, like I was giving them autographs, and this is the
Wow.
craziest situation. They were huge fans, and Questlove, is Amir, his name is, told me that this is going to sound weird, and kind of, I hope doesn't sound racially weird, but he said, "You guys, I don't know if you know, have got a ghetto pass," which is pretty damn cool, I
That
think.
is very cool. Yeah.
So yeah, we've been sampled by a lot of hip hop artists, and I love some of the hip hop music out there. I think it's some of the most progressive music out there than a lot of the pop stuff that comes out of a computer, to be honest with you.
I like the fact that you're not stuck in a particular time frame of music like a lot
Not
of
at
people
all.
do. And I'll admit to I'm a little bit of that, but I really enjoy hip hop. I know your son is very successful. You must be awfully proud of Noah.
Yeah, I am. Of course, both my kids are very, very creative, and Noah has got to take a beat under his wing. He's kind of managing me now, so which is great, and giving me sort of the advice that in my old age, I like to hear what's happening out there,
Yeah,
and he's incredibly creative and has done amazing things. In fact, we will start promoting the book in in the middle of June, because
I'm really
and
excited about that book.
yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna have
some
plenty.
great stories. You'll hear and see some of the great stories that if the pairings of the groups and the different things that went on behind the scenes, and in the scenes, and all the various crazy things that we and the not so crazy things,
Yeah.
the disasters and whatever.
Did your parents live long enough to see some of your success?
My father, my mother, yes, of course. My mother, she died about 20 to 18, 19 years ago. My
Yeah.
father died when he was 50 years old of a heart attack, and it was a real shock to the whole family, and myself and my brother Phil were there when he died, and that caused a great deal of trauma, if you like,
Yeah.
uh, to all the family. Um, he lived life to the fullest. I mean, he was a real jazzer. I mean, he real after the gigs, he'd come back with his musician friends and busk, or play at home with until 2 or 3 in the morning, and so he was again. This is I guess a kind of bohemian life, but I didn't know about that at that time. I thought everyone had that kind of lifestyle.
See, the die was cast for you to be a musician very early.
Absolutely correct. It was. Yeah.
Wow, that's terrific. Oh, there's so many things I want to ask you, and I'm not going to get through all this. Again, I'm really two things. I'm thrilled to see your audience actually continue to grow. That's an amazing thing to happen to you guys. Not all bands get that luxury, and I think it's the authenticity that your fans recognize with your music, and that's enduring. I like to say, I'll go through albums. The reason I put that album up was there's only 4 or 5 albums I've got left. I've had to either pay the bills or through subsequent moves, they've
Right.
disappeared or lent them to friends. But I think I've got a Hendrix box set. I've got 3 Friends, maybe the first Dire Straits album, and that's about it. And
Right.
it's amazing the quality, the attention to detail that you guys put into it, the creativity. I don't, again, to lump you into this prog category, I think is a disservice because you may have come out during that period, but you're so much more. I don't even know anybody that's as unique as your band was, honestly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your kind words. No, this is interesting because when I received the final version of Playing the Fool, and I have a 5.1 stereo, whatever it is, set up here, and when I put it on, it was it was very fresh to me.
Yeah,
I knew the album, of course. I hadn't played it in many years, and I heard it, and I thought, damn, we were good.
you were really good.
No, it's just funny for me to say it out loud,
Yeah,
because I listened to what we did and how we did it, and it was done so many years ago, and I thought, wow, is that me? Is that them? Is that my brothers? Is this the band? And I thought, well, yeah, we're damn good. I mean, if I was listening to it in my guise of the Darth Vader side, as the dark side, I would sign this band.
yeah. That's all the affirmation you need.
Exactly
Uh,
that.
Listen, it's been a real pleasure. I really hope you'll allow me to talk with you again once the book comes out. I'm thrilled to hear about it. And it's probably been a long time in making, is it not?
Yeah, it's been about 4 years actually.
Okay. And
Yep.
you got your son to blame for getting you pushed
Well,
out?
not really, actually. It was a friend of mine, ours actually, that he's passed away a couple of years ago, but he used to be the book editor of the New York Times book reviews. And I tell him these stories,
Yeah.
and he'd continue to say, "Well, you should really write a book." Oh God, are you kidding? Write a book? And ultimately, I started, about 4 years ago, and I have a co-writer, but I decided, okay, you know what? At my age, there's I've experienced a lot, and I can look back and assuming I can still remember some of the interesting sides of what happens in the 60s to the 70s to the 80s to the 90s, the 2000s, and where I am now, etc. Is an interesting look on what happened in the music business and how much it changed and where it sits now, in the age of AI and digital and everything else.
Yeah. And you're still here. I think that's great.
Um, I'm still breathing, and I'll get up in the morning, and my heart was still beating. So thank goodness I'm able to be around.
That's always a good thing. Derek, it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been really this is wonderful, and I hope to see you soon again, as soon as the book comes out. Okay.
Sure, my pleasure.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, and great luck with playing the Fool. It's I recommend it to everybody. I've got it because it's on CD. I don't have a CD player anymore in the computer, so I make excuses to get out in the car and take a long drive so I can listen to it. It's great. It's just really, it was well done. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your time today.
My pleasure.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Much more. Paris, merci bien. Thank you.